I want you to just close your eyes for a second.
Assuming you aren't behind the wheel right now.
Right, yeah. Please keep your eyes open if you're driving. But otherwise, picture this. It is the absolute dead of summer.
Oh, those brutal, hazy months.
Exactly. Where the heat just seems to warp the air in front of you. We are in Gary, Indiana, and we're standing right on the edge of the Ernie Pyle School basketball court.
You can practically feel the heat radiating off that blacktop.
You really can. And you hear the heavy thud of a basketball, the squeak of the sneakers, and that very distinct metallic clink of a ball snapping through chain nets.
It's a very specific sound.
It is. And surrounding this court is this incredibly vibrant, multicultural crowd. You've got kids, you've got adults, players built like linebackers, and guys who look like they honestly haven't slept in 2 days.
But they are all completely hyper-focused on the game happening right in front of them.
Totally. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it just feels like the center of the universe.
Because it is a crucible. There's a very specific, undeniable gravity to a neighborhood court in the middle of summer. I mean, it operates as a community hub, sure, but more importantly, it functions as a high-stakes proving ground.
Yeah.
The social hierarchies and the power dynamics out there, they're as complex as anything you would find in a Fortune 500 company.
And that dynamic, that exact intensity, is why we are spending time on that blacktop today for this deep dive. We are exploring a really fascinating piece of writing titled Who Got Next? Leadership Lessons from the Gary Courts.
Penned by an author known simply as Coach K.
Right. And our mission today is to unpack how the gritty, unspoken, just super high-stakes rules of street basketball actually serve as a literal masterclass for the most critical decisions you will make in your life.
We are talking about the architecture of building a business.
Evaluating talent.
And in a wild pivot that we're definitely going to explore later.
Oh, we are.
Managing your recovery from major medical surgery.
Yeah, it goes there.
What's fascinating here is how the most profound leadership paradigms often emerge from the most unstructured environments. We're conditioned to think of leadership as, an academic pursuit.
Like something codified in a corporate boardroom with a slide deck.
Exactly. But Coach K is arguing that the raw, unfiltered environment of a pickup basketball game demands a level of real-time strategic thinking and psychological evaluation that honestly rivals any executive MBA program.
Because out on the asphalt, the feedback loop is immediate.
It is public, and it is entirely unforgiving.
So let's start with the foundational premise that Coach K lays out, which basically frames this specific court as a classroom. On the Ernie Pyle court, being selected to play isn't just a casual recreational activity.
No, not at all.
The author explicitly describes stepping onto that blacktop as a privilege beyond privilege, and Coach K anchors this in a deeply personal, emotional driving force.
The text highlights a core belief. It says, God called me, and I answer every day.
Yeah, that is a massive, heavy foundation to operate from.
It really is.
When you approach a seemingly mundane activity with that level of spiritual or personal calling, you don't just coast through the motions. You take the responsibility of leadership incredibly seriously.
And that framing completely alters the psychological landscape of the text. It elevates the experience from a mere game of hoops to a profound metaphor for stepping up to the plate in your own life.
Right.
When you view your actions, whether that's picking a basketball team or hiring a marketing director or choosing a surgeon through the lens of a higher calling or an uncompromising sense of purpose, every single decision carries immense weight.
You are no longer just participating. You are stewarding an outcome.
Precisely. And that philosophy translates directly to the ruthless mechanics of how power actually changes hands in pickup basketball.
Yeah, so if you've spent any time around street ball, you already know the power dynamics of having next. You don't just wander onto the floor when a game ends.
Oh, definitely not.
You have to claim your territory on the sideline while a game is already going. You stake your claim by announcing who's got next. You are publicly declaring that you are the next person in line to assume control of this court.
But the absolute second you secure that spot, the spotlight swings directly onto you. And the immediate follow-up question from the crowd is,
You got your squad.
Exactly. And the arrival of that question is where the theoretical concept of leadership becomes a terrifying reality. The stakes are sky high because street ball operates on a universal mandate of ruthless efficiency.
The winners always stay on the court.
Always. They keep playing until someone is capable of dragging them off of it. So if you, as the person holding the power of next, assemble a weak team, you aren't just going to lose a casual game.
No, you will be Humiliated.
You will be swiftly ejected from the court, and you will be sent to the very back of a very long line to wait hours for another chance.
Just sitting there thinking about your bad choices.
Right. The pressure of that potential failure rests entirely on the shoulders of the person doing the selecting.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is where the stealth leadership training really starts to take shape. While you are standing on that sideline, supposedly just waiting for the current game to end, you aren't passively observing.
You might look relaxed, maybe leaning against a chain-link fence.
But internally, your brain is functioning like a supercomputer. You are scouting.
You're forced to make rapid-fire, high-stakes calculations with really imperfect information. Coach K outlines these incredibly nuanced micro-decisions happening in real time. You're scanning the waiting crowd,
Do you select the players who are completely fresh, fully rested?
but whose actual under-pressure skills are a total unknown.
Right. Or do you direct your attention to the game currently being played and attempt to strategically recruit a standout player from the losing team?
That is such a fascinating dilemma, because if they're on the losing team, the natural human instinct is to write them off entirely.
Guilt by association.
Exactly. But a sophisticated leader looks deeper than the current scoreboard. You might see a player whose team is getting blown out, but that specific individual is fighting for every rebound,
Playing relentless defense.
demonstrating pure grit. Coach K suggests that identifying that specific kind of resilience and recruiting that player onto your squad might be the exact competitive edge you need to dethrone the winners.
You are evaluating character just as much as you are evaluating a jump shot.
Which is incredibly hard to do with all the noise.
Which brings us to the most chaotic element of evaluating talent on the fly. The personalities.
Oh, the personalities.
You hold the power of next, and suddenly everyone wants to be your best friend. The smack talk on a street court is practically its own language.
Yes,
Guys are
yeah.
crowding you, pitching themselves relentlessly.
Coach K quotes the classic refrain perfectly. Yo, pick me. I gotcha.
Yes, every single person standing on that sideline is an all-star in their own mind when they want access to the court.
And this raises an important question about a critical psychological trap that leaders fall into all the time, which Coach K identifies brilliantly. When you hold the power of selection, you are subjected to a barrage of pitches.
Right.
Human nature has a very dangerous tendency to equate loudness with competence. We naturally gravitate toward the person projecting absolute certainty because psychologically it allows us to offload some of our own anxiety.
We think, well, if they sound that confident, they must know what they're doing, right?
But the text explicitly warns against falling for that. Sometimes the loudest voice gets picked, but the most skilled player is often standing quietly in the back.
So how does someone actually distinguish between empty confidence and quiet competence, especially when the pressure's on and 5 people are literally shouting at you?
It requires a disciplined refusal to take the easy way out. Empty confidence is a sales pitch. It's designed to make the buyer, in this case, the person with next, feel safe in the moment.
But quiet competence doesn't sell itself.
No, because it relies on a track record of execution. The leader's job is to ignore the volume of the pitch and rigorously evaluate the evidence of skill, because the text is clear here. Evaluating talent, recruiting, matching disparate skill sets, and managing those volatile personalities aren't just sports concepts.
They are tangible foundational leadership requirements.
And the cost of getting it wrong is incredibly steep.
If you let human nature take over, if you cave to the smack talk and pick the guy who talks a massive game but refuses to play defense or pass the ball, the punishment is immediate. You lose the game and you lose the court.
That immediacy is the crucial differentiator here. In a corporate environment, a bad hire picking the wrong player can often be obscured for months.
Oh, easily.
You have bureaucratic layers, quarter-to-quarter earnings reports, endless meetings where you can slowly realize or even hide the fact that you made a mistake.
On the asphalt, you don't have a quarter. You have 10 minutes.
Exactly. That brutal, immediate public failure forces you to become an acute, unforgiving judge of character and team chemistry. You aren't just searching for 5 highly skilled individuals. You are hunting for 5 individuals who are highly skilled together.
So if the cost of a bad pick on the asphalt is losing the court, what happens when we take that exact same pressure and drop it directly into a modern boardroom? Because that is the first major pivot Coach K makes in this piece.
It is a seamless transition.
The text takes these exact street ball principles and applies them to building a business. It's the identical process of choosing your squad, deciding who you are going to trust, who you are going to scale a company with, and who you want in the trenches with you when your actual livelihood is on the line.
The transition works so well because the underlying human psychology of trust, delegation, and execution remains completely unchanged, regardless of the setting.
Right.
In business, when you launch a product or start a firm, you are the one declaring next. You are
Yeah.
staking your claim in the market, and the market immediately looks at you and demands to know you got your squad.
Do you actually possess the operational team necessary to execute this vision, or are you just talking smack?
Coach K offers a very specific and frankly intense framework for answering that question. They talk about the necessity of building an impenetrable inner circle, but the text refers to this inner circle specifically as their 300.
And that isn't just a random number pulled out of thin air to sound dramatic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that number is a deeply historical and biblical reference that Coach K utilizes to illustrate a counterintuitive leadership strategy, the story of Gideon.
Right, for context, Gideon was a military leader tasked with facing a vastly superior opposing army. He initially gathered an army of tens of thousands of men.
The modern conventional business instinct would be to take that massive crowd and overwhelm the enemy with sheer numbers. Scale up, get bigger, dominate through volume.
The instinct is always to acquire more employees, more funding, a bigger crowd. But Gideon does the exact opposite. He intentionally shrinks his team. Why on earth would he whittle his forces down to just 300 men? Doesn't that violate every fundamental rule of building power?
It violates the rules of vanity metrics, but it aligns perfectly with the rules of execution. Gideon didn't just randomly fire people. He instituted a series of rigorous tests to evaluate his men.
The water test.
Yes. The most famous was observing how they drank water from a stream. The men who dropped their weapons, got down on their knees, and buried their faces in the water were dismissed.
They lacked vigilance.
The 300 men who stayed on their feet, kept their weapons ready, and lapped the water from their hands while scanning the horizon. Those were the ones he kept. He tested for discipline, hyper-readiness, and total alignment with the mission.
He was searching for quiet competence over a loud, undisciplined crowd.
Precisely. Gideon won against impossible odds because those 300 men were the right people. He prioritized specific, uncompromising traits over the comfort of a large headcount.
Because every person you add to your team either acts as a multiplier of your effectiveness or a diluter of your mission.
In business, one misaligned executive, one partner who isn't keeping their eyes on the horizon, can derail an entire enterprise. Coach K is arguing that you have to be as ruthless in the curation of your corporate inner circle as Gideon was with his army.
Or as the player on the sideline is when vetting teammates.
Exactly.
That is a massive paradigm shift for you listening, especially if you are an entrepreneur or a manager. Your default setting might be to grab the biggest crowd, hire the largest stack you can secure funding for, or chase the highest number of followers.
But Coach K is demanding that you stop looking for the biggest crowd and start obsessing over finding the right squad.
Quality of alignment absolutely supersedes the quantity of bodies in the room.
It forces a leader to ask terrifying questions. Look at your current team. If you were going into a high-stakes battle or stepping onto a winner-stays court, how many of them would actually pass the water drinking test?
How many are truly vigilant and how many are just comfortable?
It's a tough mirror to look into.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Coach K takes this entire philosophy, the intense who got next mindset, the rigorous talent evaluation, the Gideon principle of extreme curation, and applies it to a scenario that seems completely unrelated at first glance.
Yes.
We've covered street ball, we've dissected business strategy. Now, the text pivots to medical recovery, specifically the grueling process of knee replacement recovery.
It is a profound application of the framework. Think about the psychological state of a patient recovering from major surgery. You are in a hospital gown, you are in pain, and you feel entirely stripped of your autonomy.
You feel helpless.
The traditional medical system often reinforces this vulnerability, conditioning us to be passive recipients of care. We are assigned a surgeon, we are assigned a physical therapist, and we are expected to simply follow orders and hope for the best.
But Coach K completely flips that power dynamic. The text boldly states that if you've just had knee replacement surgery, guess what? You've got next.
You are stepping out of that operating room and you are walking directly onto what Coach K calls the court of life.
It is your game. And just like on the Ernie Pyle courts, you cannot play it alone. But more importantly, you do not have to settle for the default team. You have to actively choose your squad.
This completely dismantles the traditional concept of patient advocacy. Coach K is reminding the listener that you are the general manager of this medical franchise.
Your surgeons, your physical therapists, your pain management specialists, even your personal support system at home, they all work for you.
They are the players you drafted to help you execute the single most important mission you have right now, winning the game of your recovery.
And Coach K doesn't let the listener off the hook here. To ensure you are actually managing this team, the text asks these incredibly direct, almost confrontational questions. I want you to really process these. Are you winning?
Are you getting the expected results?
Are you getting stronger? Are you regaining your confidence? And are you moving the way you should be moving?
Those questions are the medical equivalent of relentlessly checking the scoreboard. In a physical therapy clinic, it is dangerously easy to fall into the trap of confusing activity with achievement.
You think, well, I showed up for my appointment, I did the band exercises, so I must be doing it right.
But Coach K is forcing a brutally honest, results-oriented mindset. Are you actually improving? If the defined goal of this game is to walk without pain, or to return to your sport, or simply to reclaim your independence, is your current squad actually getting you closer to that goal, or are they just going through the motions?
And what if the answer is no? What if you are putting in the work, but you aren't getting stronger and you aren't moving right? This is the absolute hard truth of the source material. If the answer to those questions is no, it means your current medical team is losing the game.
And what happens when a team is losing on the Gary courts?
They get dragged off the floor.
Exactly. Coach K is giving you explicit, unapologetic permission to cut players from your medical squad.
Which is huge.
It is a radical level of empowerment, and it addresses a very real psychological hurdle. We often feel an immense sense of guilt or social friction when it comes to questioning medical professionals.
We worry about being perceived as a difficult patient if we seek a second opinion or fire a physical therapist who isn't pushing us correctly.
We fall into a sunk cost fallacy with our own health care. But Coach K's framework obliterates that guilt. If you aren't winning your recovery, you do not passively accept defeat just to be polite. You change the lineup.
You fire the PT who isn't listening to you. You find a doctor who actually looks at your specific goals instead of just a generic recovery chart.
Precisely. Because, as the text emphasizes, winning doesn't just happen miraculously. Winning starts the moment you choose the right team. Deciding who gets to step onto the court of life with you, especially when you are at your most vulnerable, is the single most critical decision you make.
You cannot afford to have a player on your medical squad who is just talking smack but failing to deliver results.
Absolutely not.
So what does this all mean when we pull it together? Whether you are sweating through your shirt on the blacktop in Indiana, sitting at the head of a mahogany conference table evaluating a merger, or lying on a mat in a physical therapy clinic trying to force your knee to bend one more excruciating degree,
You've got next.
it is your life, it is your game to play, and you are holding the power. The only two questions that actually matter at the end of the day are, who is on your team and are you winning?
And if the answer to that second question is no, it is time to ruthlessly evaluate the first question and pick a new team.
That is the perfect distillation of the message. If you are listening to this right now and thinking, I need to talk to this author, I need this specific kind of unapologetic clarity in my business, my leadership, or my medical recovery, Coach K provided their direct contact information right in the text.
Which is fantastic.
It is. You can reach out and start that conversation via email at coach@reviveyourstrength.com. Again, that email is coach@reviveyourstrength.com.
As we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that flips the perspective on everything we've just discussed.
Okay.
Throughout this entire exploration of Coach K's material, we have focused exclusively on the immense pressure and the strategic mindset of being the leader, the person who has next, the one who holds the power to evaluate talent and pick the squad, whether that is a corporate inner circle of 300 or a critical medical recovery team.
Right. The selector.
But consider the alternative reality for your own life right now. When you are the one standing on the sidelines of your career, your industry, or your community, waiting to be selected, what kind of player are you actually projecting yourself to be?
Wow.
Are you just the loudest voice in the room, constantly shouting, yo, pick me, I got you, relying entirely on smack talk, empty confidence, and a flashy resume? Or are you quietly, consistently